since we are in a luxury panel and we're running late, I managed to convince Benz that with luxury you drink champagne. So kindly my guest Chloe, please. Dan, Maria.
Wonderful.
Instead of having water, I think we deserve a glass of champagne.
All right, there you go.
I'm going to get to the end.
Welcome.
Dan, if you would sit on the far end.
Yeah.
In case you're wondering, it's an episode of Pirates of the Caribbean. It's not. Dan is a bit injured. So welcome to this panel, which I think is going to be exciting. We've got Chloe Laskaridis from Hellenic Hotels, Lampsa Hotels. We've got Maria Ashton, Accor, head of the luxury division, and Dan Wakeling, who is heading the luxury division for Hilton. I'm very much looking forward to this because luxury is something that is 5% of the total world's income in terms of goods. In hotels it's the same, and it accounts for about 95% of the income. So it's certainly a sector that is interesting to discuss. Let me start with you, Chloe, because we all know Hilton, we all know Accor, but we don't know, maybe for some people in the room, what your hotel group does. And so perhaps you could explain what you do.
Hi, good afternoon. So Lampsa Hellenic Hotels is, there we go, is one of the oldest Greek hospitality companies. Last year we celebrated 100 years of operation. We are a listed company, but it's the majority of the shares are held by one family, my family. We are owners of the Hotel Grand Bretagne in the city center of Athens. We own the adjacent King George. These hotels are both run by Marriott under the Luxury Collection brand. We also operate the Athens Capital M Gallery, which is just across the road. That's managed by Accor. And we also own two properties in Belgrade. One is a Hyatt Regency, and the other is Excelsior Mercure. So not quite luxury, but that is what Lampsa does.
But question on you, you've chosen to basically have a lot of soft brands. So you have the luxury collection as well. So it's not like it's branded, hard branded Marriott, but it is certainly a Marriott hotel, but you've got your own brand like the King George, for instance. Is there a reason?
Yes, so the Grand Bretagne was acquired first. Thank you very much. And for whoever doesn't know, for us Greeks, it's a landmark historical property. The actual hotel has been running for 150 years. In 2024, it will be 150 years of operation. So it's been there forever. So we were very keen to keep the brand Grand Bretagne. So we had to go with a soft brand. And actually, I have an anecdote about this that. When the family first acquired the property in the early 2000s, we had a very good relationship with Hyatt. So we were talking to the Hyatt development side. We bought the property from Starwood. They had not invested it in a very long time, so we weren't very happy back then with Starwood. So we were talking with Hyatt, and they firstly felt that we couldn't retain the name, but secondly felt that the level of investment needed would not suffice. Yeah. So then we had to go back to Starwood. Obviously, they were very happy to give us the Luxury Collection brand. The level of investment exceeded expectations. But we always wanted a soft brand for those properties. Yeah. And the King George is a complex. It's run as a complex with the Grand Bretagne, so we had to go with the same brand.
Let's drink to that. Cheers. Yes. Dan, going to you. You're heading the luxury division of Hilton. This area. Is product innovation one of the strategic pillars for Hilton? And could you elaborate a little bit on how innovating your luxury products is evolving?
Yeah, sure. So, Hilton has a rich history of being innovative in the space. When the Waldorf Astoria in New York opened in the late 1890s, I think it was the first hotel that actually had 24/7 room service. And then that evolved into, culinary inventions like the Waldorf salad, red velvet cake. So innovation is very much in our DNA. Where we are today is representative of all the work that has been put in over decades and decades. We're over 100 years old. But the thing that has stayed consistent is that guest expectations continue to evolve and change. And if we don't change and evolve, both our product offering and our service offering and our brands will be left behind. So, some of the things that we've, I guess, been innovating on would be around technology, straight-to-room technology, but not technology for technology's sake. Anything that reduces the pain points. Like, nobody likes standing around waiting or standing to check in. So that ability to check in using your phone with a straight-to-room digital key is something that a lot of luxury guests really like. And a lot of people say, well, then it reduces the interactions. Well, it reduces an interaction that can be sometimes painful, but then that makes space for very positive interactions. Asking somebody on the front desk, where can I go to dinner tonight, or what can I do? Those are genuinely positive interactions. ESG would be another one, and our partnerships with people like Aesop and Byredo, who have been able to package very high-end amenities, but in a bulk sense. So we're cutting down on plastics, but delivered in a really stylish and classic way that does fit with our luxury brands. So those are just, I think, a couple of the things. Yeah. In addition to branded residences, that's a growing part of our business that we see a lot in our luxury opportunities.
These branded residences, sorry to interrupt, is that something you see in specific areas growing, or is that all across the world, basically, where you see branded residences coming in more and more?
Yeah, I think we've seen, a lot of branded residences have been attached to resorts where it's a second home, and that's kind of an easy one. But I think now you're seeing even more branded residential projects in key gateway markets that are actually really mature, strong residential real estate markets like London. I think it won't be long before we see something in Paris or Milan. But at the moment, it's been probably most prevalent in what I would say new build markets like Dubai. Yeah. So Dubai has a plethora of even standalone branded residences. Is a space where people are wanting to buy into a brand because there's a certain perception of the hospitality that comes with that. You're not just living at an address, you're living a lifestyle that has services and amenities that are akin to a hotel. Yeah.
Okay, so look, let's from your innovational part, let's move to the powerhouse Accor when it comes down to brand collections. I mean, I think you've got by far the most brands under the Accor umbrella today. So you have the luxury brands, you have the lifestyle brands. How, as your luxury, how does luxury fit in your strategy within Accor? And is it very much different from lifestyle? How do you distinguish it?
So we have 42 brands at Accor, which is a lot. I won't sit here and tell you all about them because we'll be here until tomorrow evening. But we have a really big focus on luxury element, and what we do is it's about 37% of our brands are actually fall into the luxury space. We have our lifestyle vision, which is Ennismore. Half of their brands fit into the luxury kind of bucket. And then we have it is a lot. And we have our classic or core luxury brands, which is roughly about 9 brands. So what we're seeing, especially in the last years, there's quite a lot of synergy going on, particularly in the luxury division. We have the benefit of looking at this amazing company that has been integrated into the larger of Accor and see how they interact the ground floor space and what they do with F&B. We have an integrated F&B concept company within Ennismore, and we see a lot of overlap in our luxury brands utilizing those expertise in-house. So I think while they're different offerings, we do see a lot of kind of things that align with both luxury and then luxury lifestyle.
Yeah. So the lifestyle word has fallen, and that triggers a question. Has luxury changed over the last, and the luxury experience or the luxury offering that you hoteliers are offering, has that changed in the last 10 years? Will that change towards the future? We saw this morning Harold describing a different kind of traveler coming in, and we discussed in the pre-discussion the urban nomads, the guys that work for Google, the guys that are technology, they have a lot of money on their bank accounts. Are they choosing a different kind of luxury? Is that evolving? Chloe, let me start with you. Have your hotels evolved?
I mean, our hotels have evolved for sure. I don't know if sort of the luxury, digital nomad is going to pick a city center hotel per se. I think they prefer more sort of resorty types. But for sure, we have evolved and trying to keep up with the trends. Sustainability is a really big one, and we've been doing our best, trying to track our carbon footprint, trying to source sort of locally our offerings on the menu, even for our spa. We've become a lot more organic and maybe less chemical. Digitalization again. Our hotel is quite a heavy duty, heavy armchairs, heavy curtains, but we do try to be as modern as we can and as digitalized as we can. And definitely, we were discussing this before as well, how a lot of our guests want more of an experience rather than the classic things that you would expect, which is obviously butler service, concierge, 24/7 room service.
But
of
that
course,
is a
you're
change,
going to offer these.
isn't it?
That has changed, and it has been expedited by the pandemic for sure, but it is something that we saw even before. And our level of service, the way we train our staff, but also what we offer outside of the hotel. It's not just a tour to the Acropolis. It's trying to immerse them in the local culture.
Yeah. Dan, you've got a very strong opinion on this. Have you seen change taking place? And what is the trend? Tell me the word trend. I know that triggers something with you.
Yes, I think travelers' expectations have changed. I think, it wasn't so long ago that international travelers going to a country or a city they'd never been to before would go to a Hilton or a Marriott because that was probably the best hotel in the market. And it was for quite some time. So I think, expectations of luxury travelers have moved on massively in what they want out of their stay, to the point where you can't really talk about demographics anymore when you're talking about who is a luxury guest or who's going to come and stay at my hotel, what's my target market. We talk about more of a mindset, what's your purpose of your visit? Why are you traveling to some particular place? And why did you pick that hotel? And why would you pick that hotel in this particular market? And I think you have to be sensitive to that and evolve to that. Obviously, it's hard to go and change your product every 2 or 3 years in accordance with the trend, but there's things that you can do on the service side of things that change the way you interact with your guests. And I think that's one of the areas where we've seen quite a lot of change. In addition to the way people eat and drink. So a lot of, for a time, it couldn't be luxury if it didn't have white tablecloths and silver and crystal and white glove service. And there's probably some people that still want that, but I think by and large, most people want genuine connections with the people that they're eating with. So they want to have great food, so that's a great experience, in an environment that makes them feel comfortable, and something that's very memorable. So they're in this sort of collection of experiences rather than collecting material things.
So that's basically, if I say this right, it has changed from an internal kind of product delivery to an external product delivery. So the experiences that people demand, basically it's the consumer that you're listening to who demands that change. In the old days, that's what I'm trying to say, it was like I'm building a hotel and I make it extremely luxurious and therefore I've got a luxury hotel. So the experience was less important.
Yeah, I think that's right, but also, the demands of what matters to guests now. So it's no surprise that you've heard ESG mentioned on this stage, probably by almost every panelist. And I think it was, I forget who it was that said it, but it was in the business of buying hotels, and part of their DD process, there's actually a new section they've put in about, okay, what are the ESG credentials for this building? We know from talking to our salespeople that over 80% of discussions around big corporate clients, they're asking us, what are you, Hilton, doing about ESG? Tell us about that. We've created teams. So those are the areas what things I think are going to drive change about expectation, how you experience a property, how you build a property. That will drive a lot of change in our industry.
So
generally.
If ESG will touch on that in a minute. I was going to ask you, Maria. So within Accor, you've got actually a flow of range of luxury products. How do you see that experience? Do you agree with that, or do you have anything to add on that?
I do. I agree with Dan. I think even 5 years ago, we were always looking at the customer experience and the customer journey. I think you're almost kind of throwing a lot of the standards out of the window and saying, like, what does this guest expect? What do they want to feel in a hotel? And I think the pandemic has just expedited this. We were all cooped up for 2 years. When we go, we want to have something that means something, whether that's the place you visit, if you're learning something, if the honey on the buffet table comes from somewhere where there's a story, you want to know about that as a traveler, especially on the leisure side. So I think that's becoming increasingly important. But then you have to tie it all in. So how do you make that guest feel that way, and how do you make them feel cared for? Most of it is the staff, but then you also need the facilities to back it up. And then thinking about the ESG side, I mean, I think we're really at the last year where we can get away with, just saying and just talking about it. From now on for Accor, we're really looking at 2023 and how do we make things different? How do we get this hotel from here to there? Because it matters. People are asking us for it. People are not booking hotels. On the corporate side, they're not booking it unless they feel like the hotel is not taking away as much as they're giving. And on the leisure side, it's even more important.
Yeah, cool. So we've seen during the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, we've seen a lot of rise in numbers. We've seen that luxury has really picked up. It really worked well. Have you seen that same rise? I'm probably asking for a confirmative answer, but you've seen rates going up also in all your luxury products?
Yeah.
How about occupancies?
I think occupancy is a difficult thing because no matter what anyone says, there's definitely a staff shortage, and it's not just in Europe, it's also in North America. And I constantly ask myself, how many of those hotel rooms are actually open? Because we do see these really powerful rates coming through. And a lot of it is pent-up demand, but how much of it is because we don't have all of our inventory open? So I think it's an interesting thing to study, and how long is that going to be the case? Are we going to see these ADRs? They could be here to stay, but how much of it is just a moment that we're experiencing? Yeah,
I see the same thing. We discussed it earlier. If we looked at the numbers that Thomas showed us earlier, they obviously look promising and they're probably obviously correct. But and I'm not doubting that at all, but there is quite a bit of inventory that has been shut, has not been taken into account. So RevPAR is probably the more logical thing, logical KPI to look at. So luxury travel for this part of the world. So look at Greece, look at Croatia, look at Albania, because we saw that's coming up with a big pipeline. How do you guys see that develop in this region? Chloe, perhaps for you, because you are present with 5 hotels in the region. Are you looking to expand?
We are always open to opportunities, although not per se looking to expand. But I think I can speak for Greece, maybe I can speak for Serbia with a little certainty, not for anywhere else. But I mean, Greece, I know great things are happening. It's a fantastic country. We have a great product. Resort types, especially, lots of investment. The city of Athens needs some work. Serbia, the same. In Belgrade, there's quite a few really high-end properties supposed to open in 2023 and 2024. So, I mean, I think definitely there are opportunities out there, for sure.
Dan, do you see the same thing happening here in the region?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Hilton Athens might be a good one to talk to about how markets evolve and the need for change. And we've had that hotel for 60 years. It opened. Conrad Hilton himself came here and personally opened it. So, whilst we're very, very sad to see it go as a Hilton, the owners are putting a lot of money into it to completely reconfigure and renovate it and position it in the luxury segment. And I think that sort of talks to a little bit what we were saying before about, what do guests want and how has their expectations of stay changed. So that's one thing I think, we're looking forward to that opening in a couple of years. It's going to be amazing. Fewer keys, branded residence, private members club. It's almost a adaptive reuse rather than a conversion.
Can I just interrupt and say quickly, though, that room rates in the city of Athens are, for 2022, we're the cheapest European city centre destination. So it's great to have new products coming in, but hopefully all this will translate also into slightly
I think
higher
probably
rates.
Athens need to do a better job on selling this as a destination for leisure travelers just in general, and there's this whole trend around leisure. And I was at a conference last week, and Robin Rossman called it mullet tourism, if anyone knows what which I thought was actually a great, business at the front, party at the back haircut. So I think Athens could do a far better job, but there's not a lot of places that you can stay that have a genuine luxury experience in this market. Yeah, and I'd say the same once you get out of Athens and go into the islands. There's some beautiful parts of this country, but I think maybe the strategy historically has been,
Sunsea and whatever we can get.
And volume, yeah. And I think there's definitely a demand out there for something that's a little bit more bespoke, larger room, more of the kind of all villa type, all suite type product. But it is challenging because it's a seasonal market, right? And that's something that we operators have grappled with over the years.
And how seasonal is it? I mean, we heard this morning as well that the shoulder periods are becoming probably prime season in this part of the world because it's getting so hot. Isn't the holiday period or the seasonal period, put it that way, is it expanding? Isn't April, May already
we
high
wish
season?
it was expanding, but I mean, we have a 12-month operation in the city centre, and it's extremely seasonal still, and you can see it just from looking at our numbers.
I think this year doesn't help as well with the amount of airline travel that's been cut. I think it's probably a bit hard to tell. You have so many flights that have been cut this year to destinations, and the routes that are on are fairly busy. But what would those destinations look like with 4 more flights a day from a European capital city? Probably pretty different.
Yeah. No, so I guess we need a couple more years to build up some new averages, so to speak. I'd like to move to ESG and sustainability. It's basically it's in every panel. We just said it earlier. It's sustainability. ESG, by the way, is a word that 2 years ago nobody heard of, and all of a sudden it's top of everybody's agenda. Not only in the hotel industry, but every corporate also. It's top of everybody's bill. How is that going to influence the luxury travel? Is that going to have an influence on it? Is it easier or is it more difficult for luxury products to deal with an ESG strategy, or does it matter? Dan?
I think it definitely matters. If you don't pay attention to what's happening and what people are asking for on ESG, you're going to be left behind. People that are buying hotels care about it. People that are buying hotel experiences and stays care about it. People that work in hotels care about it. Kids care about it. So there's no choice. It's not an option anymore. And a lot of people might say, well, in luxury, if you're paying $1,000, that's okay. You can pollute the environment. And I don't think that's the case. I think those kind of people that are paying those kind of rates know. They know what they want, and they expect more out of their stay than that.
Did they make a conscious choice, Ria?
Yeah, I think they have to make a conscious choice. I think the concept of in a luxury hotel where you would have a communal pump for your shampoo and conditioner a few years ago, that would not have been acceptable. But now people, I know when I go into a hotel, I'm much more relaxed when I see that because I'm expecting that now. And I think there's different things that we're all dealing with as well on ESG. I think the hotels that are operating, they need to obviously figure out what they could be doing better. And I think that's how they should be measured. Like my hotel is from here.
Food waste and food miles as well, right? So with our F&B team in Dubai is doing a lot of work around this, working with a local provider where they're growing a lot of their product lines in market, which including greens, right? How do you grow greens in the desert? But it's vertical farms and things like that. And being able to support those guys with volume investments and volume commitments enables them to be a little bit more innovative and expand their product lines, and that's for the benefit of everyone. So we're not buying lettuce that's got to travel 3,000 miles. You're buying it from down the road. So I think that's something that I know we're doing, and we really care about that in each sort of local sense. But you have to expand that right across. It's not just luxury. I think it's every.
Does ESG or sustainability will it influence the definition of luxury, or is it just something that is adopted just like in any other hotel level of brand, whatever you have? Is it going to have an influence on how we live luxury?
I think yes, in terms of how it's translated on property and how you live it on property, it'll be different, like everything else.
But it's accepted.
Yeah. But it'll be, just like you have a bed, a toilet and a shower and a bath room in a hotel room, there's only so much you can innovate out of that, right? So I think ESG is going to be one of those things where it'll just be part of doing business, whether you're in a hotel or running a corner store.
But to give you an example, I mean, if I sit here in this hotel, I'm staying here, and I look at, and I'm in the morning, I'm up at the breakfast room. I mean, it's an extremely lavish breakfast that you can get. You can just about anything you want, you can get here. I'm pretty sure that not everybody consumes the entire breakfast there today. What do you do with the food?
I think that's the hardest challenge in hotels is the food waste. I think we're seeing this interesting concept, which we're thinking about even putting it in some of our hotels, is where if you don't eat something, you get charged for it on a buffet line.
That's
now we have it's not luxury, but it's actually an interesting concept because it really makes you think about, well, do I actually need that? Do I want that?
Yeah.
So these different ways of testing ideas on your consumers and your guests.
If luxury hotels are getting smaller, then is it really luxury to have a buffet breakfast and line up and get your own food? Mm-hmm. You'd like to have an a la carte menu, and if you do a few things really well, that could be a great breakfast experience. And that's easier to do when you've got a 100-room hotel versus a 500-room hotel. No matter what labour market you're in, it's difficult to do an a la carte breakfast with 500 rooms. A lot easier with 100.
Last question on ESG. How is it with alignment with owners? Because when you are brands, and it goes for all three of you, because all three of you work with brands and you are the brands, is the demand for ESG adaptiveness, is that in your brand standards? Are you aligned with the owners? Because the building and the operations are not always the same. How do you deal with that? Maria?
So we're redoing all of our brand standards to include a very specific part of ESG. I think they've been embedded in the standards overall, but we need to make now a separate chapter on it, if you will. I've been in about 4 owners' meetings today. Every single one of them asked about ESG. So I think there's a really willingness to try.
There's a drive from the owners itself as well.
Yeah, and we're just designing hotels differently. I mean, it starts with when we're reviewing plans. How is the kitchen? Is there room for a dishwasher that can do bottles? Where is the compost? It's all the way down to how a hotel is built, whether it's a conversion, which is also really important right now. I mean, from Accor's perspective, I think when we present a new hotel, I think it's a much easier sell if it's a conversion because of that ESG element. So with the new builds, we have to be even more careful about making sure that new build hotel is going to leave, gives more than it takes. So I think that's all back down to how do we make it the most efficient building, and that starts with the owners, isn't it?
Yeah. So that works. Last topic. So the future of luxury. What will in the next 2 years? What are the main changes, if any, that you see coming, Chloe?
I mean, for us, as we've discussed to death, I think today, ESG, sustainability. So that's something for us that's very important, and we are trying to push along. I mean, we discussed before the panel the concept of space, and Dan said it's probably something that's pandemic-led, but we have seen that we've had a lot more requests for suites, and not just suites, but also outdoor spaces. So we have converted, I mean, it's very difficult in a city center hotel, as you can imagine, to find outdoor spaces. But we have utilized previously, spaces we'd sort of forgotten, like an indoor atrium. We've made it a nice outdoor F&B outlet. So outdoor spaces, utilizing anything that you can. Wellness, I think, is another thing that's huge, and something we're focusing on. And as we said again before, just experiences and enhancing the guest experience, making them feel valued, making them feel like they're connecting with where they are, really.
Yeah. So Dan, we've touched on it, the branded apartments is a luxury experience that is an add-on basically 10 years ago. It was hardly there. Today it's moving. Is that something you see continue? Are there other things you see change in the luxury space?
Yeah, I think there's other things driving that as well as, it's very difficult to build a genuine luxury hotel in any market of the world and put all that money in up front and then wait for 3 years before you start getting a decent cash flow. And so a lot of developers look at branded residences as a way of kind of getting a front-loaded cash flow.
That's right.
and juicing the returns if you can do that in a particular market. And in some resort markets, it might make sense actually to have that where you can sell a second home to somebody, there's a rental program, there's some limited usage rights, and that can form part of hotel inventory.
Yeah.
If it's designed and built correctly, these can be good lifestyle investments for people. I think those types of investments are more lifestyle investments. They're not your cash flowing, residential real estate that you buy. Albeit, I think there's definitely a value premium when you come into the urban markets. Against, lots of studies have showed branding adds a premium. It's not just the premium developers care about, it's also being able to stand out in a crowded marketplace sometimes. So it's velocity of sales.
Yeah, that's a clear novelty in coming in. Maria, last one for you, but what other changes do you see happening going forward?
I think it's just we have to think about, in luxury anyway, it's personal. So how do we keep making that hotel or that lobby or that experience personal? Because it's going to keep changing, but how do we keep it authentic and care for the guest? I think is my biggest thing is the future. I think that's where it's going to sit.
I think I agree with all of you. Any questions from the audience, for any of the panelists? Please, gentlemen in the front.
Yes, thank you for a very informative session. But there's one area actually I failed to connect. When you spoke about luxury, I felt like each one was defining luxury in her or his own way. I mean, ESG to me is not luxury, ESG is way of life, so don't put that under luxury. If you talk about table covers, some of you spoke about the digital experience in the hotel. So what is the one or two common denominators that makes it a luxury collection?
It's a good question. It's a good question. We discussed it prior to coming into this room, and Maria, you've got a strong opinion.
What makes it luxury?
Dan also, by the way.
I think, I'm lucky in the company I work with. I've got 6 different brands I get to play with, actually 9 that I get to play with in the luxury space, and each has, one is maybe more entry level, and then one is kind of at the top bit. How I look at it when I see is obviously the location. A lot has to do with kind of the facilities that are going to be put into the hotel. So, I mean, luxury is a lot of space sometimes. So, in a resort especially, you want to be able to do a bit larger of a room for a certain type of category of luxury. So that kind of, for me, it all stems from the location and actually what the physical kind of shape of the building is, or what can be built, and then also who's going to come. And I think that's how you, for me, is when I look at what brand it could be and what spectrum of luxury.
Yeah.
I think, just to expand on that, yes, it's the physical product. And we've all got our brands and our brand standards, and you've got to have the right carpet and the right marble and the this and the that. That's only part of it, because ultimately what you're trying to do is create a physical product where people can experience a destination. You want them to come into the property, and if they're in London, know they're in London. If they're in Athens, know they're in Athens, without having to go outside and look out the window. But on top of that, it's really the service. That's going to be the main differentiator of how someone makes you feel. Because, most of the stories that you hear around dinner parties about this hotel or that hotel or this luxury resort, it's not necessarily about what the thread count is of the sheets. Those are table stakes. Yeah. You have to have that. Otherwise, you won't be considered luxury. People won't stay with you in the first place. What keeps them coming back is how did you make them feel when they were there? Yeah. Having that emotional connection. It's not about buying handbags and shoes and things like that. We've all got those. It's the things that you can't buy. That's what luxury is.
Yeah. Should I answer your question?
Sorry about that. No, I agree 100% about the experience in terms of service and attention to details. I think that's, to me, what is the tipping balance. Mm-hmm. But, having a nice building, marble flooring, blah, blah, you can have it everywhere. But that additional kind of qualitative value add, I think, to me, it makes a difference.
Thank you. We've had Jonathan. There. Yeah. Jonathan first, Harold last. Okay.
Very quickly, on sustainability issues, which part of the world is really taking lead on this? And I only mention it because of last week in Dubai. Dan, I thought what Hilton's doing with Fresh on Table in procuring local produce for hotels and high-end restaurants is quite remarkable. Particularly, that whole issue of food security as well in that region. So there's some really clever initiatives that are going on right now in Dubai. But are you seeing that elsewhere? And who's sort of leading? Who can we follow in globally? Who's doing this?
Yeah, I think, look, we've got a pretty big focus and attention on ESG, and what Emma and her team are doing in the Middle East is just part of that. I think we're going to hear from Paulina. Is that right? Tomorrow? Where are you? I can't see you. I think you're here. But that's her job, is to look at what we can do better. What do we need to do? How is it going to be measured? Because I think that's something that's still to be decided. But it's a focus of our business generally right across the board. It's not just the Middle East and making sure we have food sustainability and food miles. It's right across the board.
I can add something to that as well. If you look at, obviously in the Middle East, it's difficult to grow crop and to grow food, so there's a lot of import. In the Netherlands, at this point, where I'm from, the Netherlands is the second largest producer of agricultural product after the US in the world. And today, that goes for agricultural products, but also for meat production, pigs, cows, and all that stuff. We produce meat every year for 250 million families. But the nitrogen exhaust is so big that the biodiversity in the Netherlands is going to... So that is all going to change. So that is now shifting to local produce. It has to be spread out. So it will take several years. So which continent is taking the lead? Is taking the lead? Was your question? It's anybody's guess. I think there's innovation everywhere. Harold, last question for you, before we allow everybody else to go and have a glass of wine, which we've already finished. Harold.
Is ESG already driven by the customer demand or driven by the corporate responsibility?
Wow, good question.
I think it's a bit of both. I talk to my sales colleagues, and when they're selling business, if 80% of your customers are asking you, what are you doing about ESG? They might not know what ESG is, but they know they need to ask about it, then you need to focus on it.
Yeah? Okay, and is there already space in the market for, let's say, 100% eco-luxury brand, or is that too early?
I think that's a question from Maria.
I've definitely had inquiries. I've definitely had inquiries and talked about, is that a brand, or is that something that fits within your existing brand set? There's a lot of brands sitting on this on this panel already, right? And there's only two of the majors up here, right? So there's a lot of brands in place, but I think all those brands are going to have to grapple with ESG in some shape.
I think it has to be important for every brand and for every hotel owner. It's the only way that we're going to make a difference. So yes, it would be lovely to have an eco brand, and probably my employer is going to be the first to launch it, knowing them. But we shouldn't distinguish between segment or brand or company or ownership. We should all be doing it.
It needs to be genuine and measurable as well, because I think people, whatever decision you make now about building an eco-lodge, you're probably going to be embarrassed in 5 or 10 years' time about the things that you didn't think about and the things that people really cared about. So I think you need to be careful about making brands about things that are still evolving.
Last word. First word was for Chloe, last word also. How are you dealing with your local 5 hotels? Do you buy stuff locally? How do you deal with ESG? Consciously or with the flow?
Consciously, I would say. We're not innovators by any means, of course, but definitely for the Athenian properties, we've completely reformulated our menus so that we are able to offer what people, our clients will want, but it's locally sourced. So, for example, the burrata is not brought in from Italy, but we found a local supplier on one of the islands. In Belgrade, we have bees on the roof. So we have honey that's literally made on our roof. So we're trying to find things that we can do. Because obviously, listed buildings, not a lot you can do with the actual building.
That answers the question. Thank you very much, Chloe, Maria, Dan. Give them a big hand.
Thank you.
Thanks.